today. And now that we have these intros out of the way, we can just jump right into some of the topics that we have for our panelists. So panelists, here we go. It's all you guys now. Related to pricing escalation clauses and other contingency type clauses, including liquidated damages, have you noticed any recent trends or amendments to contract language that stand out to you?
I can jump in here and start. So I haven't seen many changes to liquidated damages clauses. What I have seen for high revenue generating projects such as hospitals, hotels, in some instances there's been a migration away from liquidated damages to and instead deleting the mutual waiver of consequential damages. So consequential damages are typically items such as carrying costs, lost profits, revenue, that type of thing. So, what liquidated damages would typically be to substitute, people are looking more towards recovering those actual damages in that situation. As far as cost escalation, this has kind of evolved over the past nine or months to a year. At the outset of the price uncertainty and supply chain issues, people, somebody was kind of left holding the bag. So we've got calls from subcontractors and general contractors and owners where, the people are kind of resorting to self-help. We're resorting to self-help remedies on the subcontractor contractor side that was kind of, holding materials hostage until they were able to negotiate a price increase and risking, possible termination and fallout from that. Now there's more of a trend from everybody's standpoint to recognize that's not a great solution for anybody, and negotiating some carefully tailored cost escalation and material shortage language into contracts.
Do you see, adding to that, do you see a lengthening of project completion times as part of that too?
Yeah, so if you look at the typical AIA language, or typical contract language, it usually doesn't include delays in materials or material shortages. So yeah, a willingness on the part of everybody to make that an express term of the contracts, either in the force majeure clause or if there's a separate excusable delay clause in that clause. And then just as far as the cost escalation aspect of that, oftentimes if I'm reviewing a contract on behalf of a subcontractor or a general contractor or an owner, I've seen subcontractors or general contractors insert kind of blanket price escalation language. And what I've found to be successful and palatable to everybody is to discuss on a project specific basis kind of what are the pain points that the contractor or subcontractor is experiencing. So for instance, I received a contract on behalf of an owner where the contractor couldn't get a price on TPO roofing materials, and I got a blanket cost escalation clause, but after a conversation we were able to kind of narrow the scope of the price uncertainty down to a specific material, and that's a lot more palatable to a term like that's a lot more palatable to an owner than just a blanket cost escalation clause.
So it seems that we're even seeing more negotiation from the owners and the GCs. Would you agree with that because of these issues we're having?
Yes, absolutely. There's a willingness on as far as what I've seen on behalf from owners that recognize that this is a real issue, and if I don't pay for it here, I'm going to pay for it down the road through having to terminate my contractor, or the materials being held hostage, or just finding out down the road that the materials aren't available. And I think on the flip side of that, I kind of akin it to a differing site conditions clause, where if you don't have one, the risk is on the general contractor or the contractor that the site of accounting or running into adverse site conditions and bearing the cost and expense of that. And so this cost escalation a cost escalation provision kind of allows the contractor to give its kind of true number rather than padding a bid to address some potential uncertainty in the future.
Instead of a guesstimate, it's real.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mike, Kirk, anything to add to that topic?
I would agree with what Tim said. For the most part, the contracts that we're seeing, we're not really seeing a whole lot of change in the LDs. We are seeing contracts kind of concede, being more forgiving with time extensions, particularly for material delays on projects. We're not really seeing a lot of change in additional pricing for those delays, but more so just an extension of time. And again, we're not seeing a whole lot of changes in LDs, but we are seeing the owners be a little more forgiving on the completion times. Price escalators, I would agree. We're not seeing a whole lot of different language there, although we occasionally have. I would agree with what Tim said as well. We're seeing probably a little uptick, and I'm guessing it has to do with the environment, but we're seeing more projects where the owner is purchasing materials and supplying the materials. I just looked at a large roofing contract this morning. $10 to $20 million roofing contract, and that was not including the materials. The owner was going to go ahead and purchase and supply the material. So we're seeing an uptick in that. We're guessing that's generated from that. We really see that the owners are maybe willing to concede some things in the contract, or maybe pay a little more to get the project done now, or take a little of that risk from the general contractors.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have you seen any changes in contract language that, this is kind of where we've been, but that could benefit our contractors or are of concern? Good or bad, are you seeing specific changes in either direction?
Yeah, I guess just continuing on the cost escalation front. It's kind of become, because it's kind of the issue du jour, it's become much more refined. So the owners, so something that's kind of negative, but I think sophisticated owners are recognizing that if a general contractor doesn't self-perform any work, then this is really originating with the sub. And so what are the subs like actual costs here? And then there's discussion around, well, this is an unanticipated increase, so should anybody be really making a profit on this? And then I guess some price fluctuation is anticipated, and so should what percentage, if any, should the contractor eat out of any increase to share that risk? Those are some things I'm seeing just in terms of negotiating that specific issue. Other things that I've seen are different mechanisms to kind of to shift the risk of differing site conditions to the contractor. So we fully examine the site, including the subsurface, and that kind of takes away contractors' ability to recover for differing site conditions. Those are some things I've seen recently that are concerning to me.
Yeah, and I would agree. I don't think we're seeing a huge change in certain things. Like I said, what I talked about a little earlier is the owner purchased, owner supplied material is one thing we're seeing more of. Say maybe the more concerning issue we have is we're just not seeing the changes. Not concerned with changes we're seeing. We're just concerned that in the economic environment we're in, we're not seeing what we feel are a lot of changes to the contracts.
Okay.
And Kurt, I'm curious, do you go to the folks that your bond principals and talk to them about that?
We do. So, not every contract, we're not reviewing every contract for every bond we write, but a lot of them we are, particularly the bigger ones, the more critical ones. And we are sitting down and we are reviewing those, and we are walking through red flag clauses in those with our clients and advising them on, how to navigate that if there is a navigation to it, or simply just refuse the risk.
Well, and
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim. No, you go ahead, please.
One other thing I was going to say, and this kind of can go beyond, just a cost escalation clause. That's important, but I think also, this discussion around this. Our firm was rebuilding their Houston office and moved into a swing space in the interim, and so we had a whole office full of air conditioned space where we could, order materials and essentially store them. And so to your point, Kirk, about, owner purchase materials, in that case, the contractor was still purchasing materials, but, we asked them for a list up front. Hey, provide us, a list of materials that you think you need to get this job done on time. And we'll, as long as you store them securely on site, which was no issue, we'll, go ahead and write you a check for those. So there's things outside of just a cost escalation clause that can be done on projects too, if people are thinking about it outside the box.
Yep.
Kirk, we have one question that popped in that's relevant to where we're at right now in regards to how the surety company looks at owner purchased materials. How does that impact your underwriting, and what is the overall view of that? And I would assume that also reduces our GC or subs contract amount.
Right. So if you have owner purchase materials, that typically is carved out of the contract. So we're still going to underwrite let's say it's $10 million of owner purchase material, and the contract that you're signing is 10 million. So half of the job is your performance and or subs, and half the job is material. We're still underwriting that on a $20 million project. Particularly in these times, it's more favorable because you don't have to worry about, the price jumping on you of $10 million of the project, or trying to mitigate your own risk by maybe buying all that material up front, and then having to worry about, is the owner going to allow you to bill and collect for that, and where are you storing it? Now you got to insure it, all those items that come with that.
Absolutely. We have seen that. One of the things I was going to suggest after the discussion we just had is that things that you wouldn't have asked for in years past to change on a contract or to consider negotiating on, we're seeing that people are having some success there. So that is something that we should do. And we have seen very large contracts use that part of owner purchase materials to, reduce really large projects. And it has been beneficial to them, especially when there's more projects coming down the line, because it reserves that bonding capacity for those other projects when you don't have to bond that material cost. So we're definitely seeing changes there for our clients that are asking those questions that they would have never maybe asked in the past. So other than the things that we've already kind of talked about, are there suggestions that you would offer to those on the call today about how they could approach a contract if the language isn't to their liking, or that there's things that they want to do, or is there any other tidbits of information you might want to offer?
I think leveraging this situation and being specific about your concerns. I mean, it's as I'm sure the contractors on here are aware. It's a tight market to get work done, even given the issues and given the cost of everything. I mean, people are still building stuff. And I was just on the phone with a general contractor, that does, $1 billion a year, and they're, if they're not getting language that they want, I know that's not everybody's situation, but if they're not getting the terms that they want, they are, they got plenty of work to do, and they're turning down jobs. So I think that, be reasonable, and I think be kind of to the point and specific about your specific issues and pain points. And I think, you can make a compelling argument as to why you need the specific language you're asking for. I think when you go in with blanket things, then that, especially if you're getting the owner's form, then that kind of can put a bad taste in people's mouth. But if you're kind of, help us use a scalpel, I think you can make a lot of headway.
Yeah, I agree. I would have said, I would have said, just communicate with the owner, let them know the clauses or what you're uncomfortable with, and, what the potential risks are that you don't want to carry. And, the best thing you can do is communicate with them. The worst thing they can say is no. And then you have a decision to make from there.
Okay, thank you. This kind of follows through with where we've been too. Are there common mistakes that you have seen contractors make that could negatively impact their surety program? One of those being the pre-purchase of materials and supplies for contracts when they're not needed yet.
Yeah, I can jump
Any-
in. Yeah, I think, we've been advising our construction clients, obviously with price increases, you gotta make sure that you're locking in those prices for jobs, when you're gathering your inventory, but, you have to be sure that those jobs are gonna start on time. I think it's a good idea to start buying those materials and getting that inventory up, for those jobs. But, if those jobs are delayed and you have lots of financing up with that inventory and, that job is delayed, I mean, you could get yourself in a really big bind, especially if you've got other jobs coming through that need that bonding capacity. So, we've been advising our clients, I don't think it's a bad idea to, start using that cash to make sure you get those materials, but also make sure those projects are going to start on time, because if they don't, you could get a really big bind and, eat into that surety bonding capacity, in a big hurry. So.
Thank you. Kirk, Tim, any more to add to that?
No, I think that's a great point. And what, I've seen, representing contractor, what I've seen kind of more sophisticated owners do is push the buyout process forward. So they have some certainty as to what the pricing is too. So instead of, kind of floating, they want to know, kind of more upfront, what the actual number is.
Right. We have another question that's come up in the same area that we're in now. Have you seen language that ties a contract price escalation to a specific commodity, such as today's hot roll coil steel price as a baseline?
Yes. And I think the consensus docs does something similar where you can, tie it to a certain price index, not necessarily a certain commodity. I guess my concern with that, unless you're operating with, raw materials, as a general contractor, you're probably not, right. And as a sub, you're probably not either. You're getting stuff, from your suppliers. That's, and so there's just some question about how closely that index or steel price of that raw material, matches up with the, I guess, improved material that's being installed. And I think there's a lot of room for error there, and that won't necessarily, I think especially things that are, fit kind of more or less finished products that are held in inventory aren't necessarily, that a contractor holds an inventory, our supplier holds an inventory, aren't going to necessarily match up with, the current market for raw material like aluminum, like you think about windows and aluminum. I don't know if those are going to completely match up. So
So it could
I'd have
lead to more
check.
disagreement.
Yeah,
at the
potential
end.
for error. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Thank you for that question. Another one, how should a contractor and their CPA look at both taxable income and depreciation to maximize both tax saving and their surety capacity for their program?
I think that hits right to me, square on the head. So I think, pre-pandemic, it was kind of bread and butter where we were advising our clients, who had, pretty sizable, profits to minimize those, obviously, because, no one wants to pay more in taxes than they need to, obviously. But kind of with the pandemic, and some contractors, get into that area where, we're seeing losses for the first time in a few years, we've been very carefully working with their, bonding agents and obviously with our auditors who prepare those financial statements to make sure, does it make sense to, write off all of the equipment that they purchased during the year, because, obviously we can take losses, but is it better to show, not a full loss instead of, kind of, not an accelerated one, but, kind of more conservative loss. That way we're not into, showing good financial statements for, surety bonding capacity. So I think it's kind of, we've seen a lot of collaboration over the last, I would say 12 to 18 months where, us on the tax side have been working with our auditors and obviously, our clients' sureties just to make sure, does it make sense to what's good for you, obviously, on my side, and minimize taxes might not be good for the contractor in the long term to get bonding capacity and, kind of expand that for bigger projects in the future. So it's kind of a very fine line where we're trying to say, okay, we can minimize some taxes a little bit, obviously, but the growth, from what we can see and, maximizing our surety program, just think it's better. It's kind of a better way to approach this this filing season than the last filing season. So it's been a very collaborative effort, with clients over the last 12 to 18 months.
And we appreciate that very much. Kirk, any response to or addition to Mike's comments?
Yeah, from the surety's perspective, we always we open our contractor to communicate with us before they do anything, what we would consider material or significant. So if they're going to make a big equipment purchase at year end, communicate with us, let us know what particularly that's going to, what course of action you're going to take. Are you going to buy a bunch of material or a bunch of equipment and use cash, excess cash sitting around? You're going to buy a bunch of equipment, use low interest financing. All of those can have impacts on surety credit, depending on, what kind of leverage we're going to look at, what kind of profitability we're going to look at for the year. So we always try to communicate with our clients. If you're doing anything significant, tax planning, ownership transition, anything like that, fill us in with that process before you do anything. And then we can give them an idea of how that will affect the bonding, because these types of situations where they do go out and purchase a bunch of equipment at year end for tax planning to create, more depreciation, to create a loss for the year. And if it's financed, well, now all of a sudden, you're lowering your equity, you're increasing your debt. So your leverage ratios are going to go up. They all can have some type of an impact on surety credit. So we just always welcome our clients to connect with us before they do anything significant, so we can give them an idea of how or if that will impact their surety credit in any way.
Kurt, do you see any of the new lease standards with those obligations and those, 12 months payments, affecting clients' working capital ratios, just, or have you guys not dealt with that yet?
We have not seen a whole lot of, if any, financial statements where there's been a real significant impact on the financials with the new leasing.
Okay.
I anticipate we probably will, but as of right now, we haven't. We thought we would have by now, but we have not. We did contemplate coming out and trying to, we're gonna take it case by case. We're not gonna really just kind of redline it and say, here's how we're gonna handle this. If, we have a company that had a lot of leases that are now showing up as assets and liabilities, and leverage is now higher. I have not been associated with an account where we've seen that yet, and to the best of my knowledge, if we have, it's been very, very, very few. And we're just handling that case by case. We're gonna have to look at things probably a little bit different under the new lease requirement, because there is a possibility that nothing's changed other than the reporting of the lease.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know auditors have been kind of telling our clients to make sure, obviously talking with the, bonding people, and then obviously, their bankers about those new lease requirements, just because if your working capital all of a sudden drops, that can impact obviously their bonding capacity pretty significantly.
Right. And there are a lot of companies that do look at the working capital, and we look at it as well. We're a little different. We look at the equity, but we look at the leverage ratio, which obviously that can be impacted by this new lease reporting as well.
Really? Thank you for that question, Mike. Appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. We have another question from our participants today. And Tim, this may be handed directly to you. We'll see. Bond language is often ambiguous or lacking regarding the legal window, and a subcontractor has to file against a bond. It is usually months after the last day of work when we are paid retainage. So our deadline for a bond claim has passed by the time we find out that the contractor or owner is defaulting on payment. Do you have suggestions for situations like that?
Yes, and that's unfortunately, if you're in the realm of public work, which I would imagine most of this is, it's this is all governed by the statutes. So regardless of what the actual language of the bond says, a lot of times it doesn't even provide a notice date, because of the very fact that the notice timing and the bond claim timing is all governed by statute. So, under, the federal bond, for instance, a first tier subcontractor doesn't have to provide any notice. It just needs to file a lawsuit within a year of, its final day of performing work. A second tier sub and below needs to provide a pre-bond claim notice, 90 days after its last day of work. But, that all supersedes whatever language is in the bond. And so it's, what I tell my clients to do and what I provide them with, in the jurisdictions that they're working, I provide them with a table of, okay, this state, do you need a pre-lien notice or pre-bond claim notice? Yes or no? Based on what level you're at. Okay, yes. When is that due? And then you insert the time period there, and have make sure the person that is responsible for those claims, to the extent they don't want to call an attorney to do it, to have that at their desk so they're ready to go. Also, and I get the point about retainage. Hey, you're done with the work. Something you could consider doing. You might ruffle some feathers, but is to, in Texas, I believe it's 30 days after your last day of work, you need to provide notice. So maybe just try and set a calendar reminder to do that. It's just understand the pain point, or maybe just send it when you're on your last day of work. Send, if you haven't been paid your retainage, just send your retainage notice, and know you're going to be sitting around waiting for a while, but at least you're covered on your bond claim perfection end. And I think you can write that notice letter in such a way to make clear you're just preserving your rights and you're not saying the money's due now, but so to not ruffle any feathers, but just in case it doesn't get paid, you're ready to go and your claims preserved.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. We have some other inquiries, but as we're nearing our time frame here, I wanted to make sure to remind everybody that if you do have questions you want to pose for our panelists, please send those to Amanda and she'll get those to us. You can send those through the chat function. From your perspectives, panelists, as an attorney, CPA, and surety underwriter, are there specific attributes that make an account more attractive to you, that make you want to work with them more? And let's add to that, are there changes that you may see on the horizon for construction contracts or for GCs or subs that you see could come in the future? Not a definite, but are you seeing things that you think may occur in our near future?
I guess I can start. What makes a client attractive to me is, it's very simple. There's two things. One is to be responsive to requests for information from us. I know it's a pain. Contractors and subs are in the business of doing work and making money, and when they have to call us, that's a disruption to their business. But I promise you, we're generally 99% of the time not asking for anything we don't need or that's not pertinent. And so timely, being responsive to our request for information and documents is crucial to us getting our job done for y'all's benefit as quickly and painlessly as possible. And the second thing is, and this is more of a personal thing, or attorney thing, but paying bills. It's I have a lot of people here I have to answer to, and so it's hard to maintain the relationship with the client sometimes if that's not happening, and so that's not, I'm not saying that's any of y'all, of course, but that seemed to become a little bit of an issue recently.
Mike, Kirk?
Yeah, I could chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I think what kind of the one things, obviously we look for a couple of things when we're looking for prospects, but kind of the biggest thing that I look for is, willingness to be open-minded and, listen to ideas. Couple, clients that we've brought in, over the last few months, they've been willing to offer and listen to, some of our ideas. They've been with their CPA firms, previous CPA firms for a while, and they were kind of doing things one way with their taxes, and obviously, we looked at everything and kind of, said to ourselves, well, why aren't we doing, things a different way just to maximize tax savings? And these clients that we brought on board, they were willing to listen to our ideas, and that's kind of the biggest things that we're looking for is obviously willingness to listen. And then, the other thing would be probably, collaboration amongst the whole team, just willing to get in there and obviously meet as a big group, with our auditors, us on the tax side, and then obviously the others, and then, any of their sureties as well, just to make sure that we're doing what's best for the company, not only in the near term, but in the long term as well. So, we're kind of looking at that, from our prospects. And obviously, if they're growing, a big thing right now is, some contractors are kind of stalled out or kind of running, a little flat just with the way the industry is right now. So, if, we have a couple prospects that are coming over that are very growing, that's enticing as well, obviously, just because, we can advise them on a lot more opportunities and things, especially when they're growing, instead of when they're flat and kind of insulate and try to be very cost saving, obviously, which to to their right, they should be, just, since they're not growing at that time. So I think probably for the future, Kirk and I kind of talked about it. I think those new lease standards, we got to be very aware of that, just because, obviously if there's working capital requirements, so they don't blow their bonding capacity. I think that'll be coming over, obviously, if it hasn't been now, probably in the next filing season, but 2022 financial statement. So I think that's probably going to be a big thing. Obviously, everyone knows interest rates are going up, obviously, and just kind of with, contractors who have lines of credit, obviously, being aware of that. Does it make sense to go out and actually buy a bunch of materials, any cash, and kind of, on that front as well. So I think there's kind of a whole new world just with inflation going on, just contractors are being mindful of, especially at this time. So.
Thank you, Mike. Kirk, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I'll give the typical surety response. The financial strength, obviously, we look at that, the equity, the profitability, the leverage ratios, but outside of that, we really like to dig into the management and ownership of the team and how they're thinking. Michael mentioned open-minded. Tim mentioned responsive. I would say those two fall in the category of a management team that and an ownership team that we, look to partner with. We like to see where their mind's at. How are they looking at risk? Again, using today inflation. How are they looking at that? How are they looking at the supply chain delays? Even outside of that, how are they verifying owner financing on private projects? Is that standard protocol for them, or is it just once in a while, and why? How are they vetting their subs? How are they deciding who they're doing business with? All of these things come into play, and I call them the intangibles because you don't see it on paper, but you get to, I guess, realize that and recognize that after you meet with them and work with them for a while. But these are all key components to, accounts that we consider successful.
Absolutely. And from the broker side, we want our clients to be successful, and we feel like we're in this together. So I think communication is key. I keep trying to teach my husband that too. But anyway, communication is key, and we have to communicate. And as you mentioned earlier, Kirk, if we're going to make big changes, big purchases, big CapEx spending, we need to communicate that before, not after it becomes a problem, or where it's not a surprise for the surety. But we're in this together. We want everybody to be successful, and we have to keep an open communication to do that.
But Paige, just one other
No,
thing.
you go ahead.
You mentioned changes on the horizon. One thing that I'm kind of seeing is there's kind of an uptick in claims and willingness to fight over current dollars instead of just making it up on the next, or an abandonment of the thought of just, okay, well, yeah, we lost a little bit, or we could have made a claim or claim to change there, and but let's just move on and keep this relationship good and or not risk it. And now I'm kind of seeing a change. People are more willing to pursue those present day claims and not being so confident that the next project's going to be there to make up the difference.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. We have another question from our participants. What tips can the panel provide to help contractors increase their bonding capacity?
The simplest and easiest is profitability and keeping those profits within the company. But yeah, there's other tips. I mean, how you structure your debt, surety companies across the board you know, when I'm speaking, I'm not speaking on just behalf of my surety company, but the whole industry is looking at leverage ratios. They're looking at cash flow, working capital ratios. They're looking at equity ratios. They're looking at profitability. So, you know, these are all things that, again, on paper, that you can do to improve your surety. Kind of some of the other things I talked about just a little bit ago are kind of off the paper, intangible things that you can do as well. And these are obviously things that take time. There are things you can do more immediately that, you know, putting money into the company personally, things like that to bolster up your balance sheet if you really need a shot in the arm or things like that. But you know, the profitability, keeping the money in the company, how you structure your debt, you know, having low debt, things like that, having good cash balances, good bank support, that all just takes time to really make any material changes.
Kurt, I had a question for you. I was wondering if there's been any changes to surety's willingness to forego the kind of the principles of the company signing the GAI.
I would say it hasn't really changed, at least within our company. You know, is no personal indemnity out there where the owners are not signing for the right qualified account. But still, the lion's share out there are signing personally on behalf of their company. Good question, though. Very good question.
Great question. We have a couple of other questions. They're both kind of about recession. One is, how would recession impact a contractor's ability to bond? And the other is, how can a contractor prepare with a pending recession?
You know, the simple short answer to how will a recession impact your ability to bond is underwriting will get tighter. It will become, surety companies will ask more questions. And ultimately, as a recession comes around, if the industry starts to, if the surety industry starts taking losses, then the underwriting will tighten up, and it will become, depending on how bad, it will become more challenging to obtain a bond, or at least obtain the limits that you were at if your balance sheet's not improving.
Do you see bolstering, you know, and beefing up your balance sheet as kind of an immediate thing to start doing as of right now? Or do you think it's kind of, you know, something to look at by year end? Or, I mean, obviously we don't know if and when a recession will hit, but, you know,
Right.
Are there steps to start thinking about right now?
I would definitely, absolutely. But, you know, and then it comes down to, you know, you have contractors that have a bunch of cash just sitting around in the bank drawing, you know, you're not making any money off that. So we understand that as well. But yeah, you know, when is there going to be a recession? We don't know. We try to predict that all the time, but we're definitely not in that game of predicting it. It will tighten up again at some point. And the best thing to do is while you're having good times, you know, build that balance sheet to where, you know, you can cut overhead, where you have overhead that's lean, that when things do get tighter, you know, you don't have a ton of overhead to carry. You know, those are just things to keep in mind. Not a lot of debt to service. You know, when things tighten up, the least amount of debt to service, the least amount of overhead to clear. You know, those are all very positive things a contractor can do and think about right now. And they're immediate. I mean, you know, that doesn't take time to do those things.
Great, thank you.
Or at least think about those things.
Before I hand things back over to Amanda, because I think we've addressed all the questions that we've received. Do any of you, and I'll come to each of you individually, have any added information that you would like to share with the participants that's relative to the things we've been talking about today. Mike, do you have anything that maybe we haven't touched on that's come to mind for you?
I would say it's when you're kind of accumulating that inventory, think about, obviously, does it make sense to use your surplus of cash in the company, or does it make sense to obviously go out and finance that? Obviously, with interest rates, maybe financing is not the right thing to do, it may be using that cash, but kind of, as Kirk has been saying, be kind of steadfast and making sure keeping your balance sheet, in a very good light, especially if a recession hits. But obviously with, prices increasing and, trying to get inventory at, a very more locked in price as of right now, just kind of be aware of that. We met with one of our clients at year end, and, he said he had to go to Menards and buy out 250 water heaters before year end because he had a big project coming up in 2022, and we were just like baffled by that. But we were concerned that project wasn't going to come through timely, and luckily for him it did. So that's kind of one of those things where our client was willing to take that risk just because the supply of those water heaters was dwindling, and he was trying to get them at a reduced price. So, that's not the only story that we've kind of heard over the last 6 months as far as materials. So, I would say just kind of be aware of, does it make sense to, use that cash and, make sure those jobs are coming in on time. And, I would say if you have backlog, managing it, because backlog is key right now, because, if there's nothing coming down the pipeline, jobs are premium right now. So
Great. Thank you, Mike. Kirk?
Yeah, the one thing I kind of jotted down here is, jobs and backlogs are larger right now. There's a lot of work out there. Backlogs are big. Critical paths are even more critical in the supply chain, and inflationary risks are high, so subcontractors, and this is for general contractors too, all contractors really, but just make sure that you're keeping your balance sheet balanced and strong, where you can have a good flexible surety program that can grow with you as these backlogs continue to grow, and they appear to be in the near future don't look like it's slowing down. So
Thank you, Kirk.
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I get one thing I would say, just kind of maybe a little bit piggyback on what Kirk said, and then just the potential of a recession and everything getting tighter. I would say, have your PMs and PEs trained up on the change orders, know the change order in your contract, make a cheat sheet, have your template notices prepared, and have the pertinent documentation, make sure everybody's aware of the pertinent documentation you're going to need for a delay or a disputed, extra work or loss of productivity. All those sorts of things, I mean, are going to mean a lot more if things tighten up.
All right. I want to thank all of our panelists today. It was so great of you to spend your time with us this afternoon, and I'm sure our participants appreciate it as well. And to our participants, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure. I'm going to hand it off back to Amanda, and she'll be able to give you information about how to get in touch with folks and such. And again, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys. Real quick before everybody leaves, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And please watch your email. We will be sending a link to the recording. That email will also include contact information for the panelists in case you want to reach out and continue a conversation with them. And there will also be a link to a really quick, like 30-second survey. If you could please provide your feedback, we always appreciate that because it helps us with our future webinars. So with that, thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.